Good morning. Euthanasia in our country has been fought against. The country said no. The politicians said no. Yet after 4 attempts at legalising this bill in 22 years, somehow the message has not been received. Recently, David Seymour waltzed into Parliament to face the media in what is only a political enhancement move. A political stunt that will give profile to the ACT New Zealand leader in the all-important election year to put forward his bill to legalise euthanasia and assisted suicide. In a society which many regard suffering to be meaningless and intolerable, euthanasia is presented as a way of avoiding that suffering, which can be made to look like an attractive option, or even a right. But to legalise the killing of those who are the most vulnerable would be to introduce a whole new and dangerous dimension to society. There is no flower crown filter on death. We can't make this glamorous, but we can face it with courage. True compassion calls for us to stand alongside those who suffer. For the mark of a great society is evidenced in its ability to care for those who are the most vulnerable. In 2015, I wrote to the Select Committee and I said that I am for maintaining the current law that opposes assisted suicide and euthanasia. In this radical attempt at passing a bill that's proven its irrelevance in our Parliament before, we must take a stand. As participating members of society, we must write to our MPs and to the Select Committee. Many people see this debate primarily as a debate about freedom of choice. But this would pose real dangers for society, and in spite of lawmakers' best intentions, there will be no adequate legal safeguards that could be implemented to protect vulnerable groups. This issue is bigger and more important than any polemic argument. No one wants to see suffering. No one wants to see torment, and no one wants to see indignity. But there are structures in place here in New Zealand and around the world that safeguard that, such as hospice here in New Zealand. Pope Francis said on the topic that this would mean the triumph of that selfishness culture that rejects those who do not meet certain standards of health, beauty or usefulness. So how does this not undermine suicide prevention efforts in New Zealand? Ink is spilled and voice is so passionately displayed about the dire suicide statistics in New Zealand. So how can we morally justify euthanasia and assisted suicide when suicide is so wrong? Euthanasia will result in the Holocaust of the weak in our country. Maria Lopez, a sufferer of chronic illness, Crohn's disease, lives in Switzerland, and she said earlier in the year that social services are not responsible for my disease, nor my decision to die, but the responsibilities that they've had and they've failed with have encouraged me to do it early. Now, I am by no means endorsing what is happening in other countries, but in New Zealand, we have social services that are amongst the best in the world. Crohn's disease is not terminal, but as you can imagine, with the fact that 2 people have been euthanised because of it, already that it is a pretty serious deal. But on the basis of that, the man standing before you right now is eligible for euthanasia. I'm eligible to be snuffed out of this world, but I'm not yet eligible for university. I've suffered from Crohn's disease for 7 years. I've been medicated with chemotherapy for the last 5. But it is scary to think that the suffering that I've endured is on the same wavelength as others who can pull out of this game early. I was able to endure and still do, with a family who struggled to fathom what is happening to their son, their brother, their grandson. Now, I'm no saint. I'm no survivor of cancer, and I don't deserve a medal. But all of us need to understand that in our suffering, whether it be big or small, must see that suffering is a test, the true test of life. And compassion does not mean pity. It means suffering with. And here it is our duty, as participating members of society, to share that compassion with those who need it most. To allow a bill like this to pass is evidence of a sick society. A society that's turned its back on the weak. We do not need euthanasia in our country. We need to promote equitable access to good palliative care for New Zealanders. We need to learn how to live well. We need to learn how to die well too. Now, I believe in a good God. A God who will protect, safeguard and defend. So may that good God protect the vulnerable. May He safeguard the value of life. And always, may God defend New Zealand.